Good evening. I am Jay Ponte, Director of Campaigns at Turn Left. Thank you for tuning in to our Turn Left Stop the Camps live stream, which is part of our national Fight for Your Rights campaign. And tonight we are going to be taking a sober look at what is happening in Southern Florida at a facility known as Alligator Alcatraz. Yeah, that sounds like satire, but actually it reflects a very real and very dangerous escalation in US immigration policy. So this isn't just about Florida. This is about infrastructure being built to bypass the Constitution. It is about the quiet normalization of American internment camps. And that's why we're here. Joining us tonight will be leaders on the front lines, civil rights attorney Gerald Griggs, Pastor Doug Paget, Reverend Jen Butler, and Major Retired General Richard Ojeda. And this is all part of our continuing work to stop the camps, because the question isn't whether more Alligator Alcatraz internment camps will be built, and they are trying to roll this out nationwide after greenlighting billions in spending. But the question is, what are we going to do to come together to stop it? Stay tuned. Watch your feed for links to join national organizing calls. Sign up at stopthecamps.com or turnleftpac.org. Stay tuned, because it is our job to come together, because these camps are coming to our backyard. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And we're going to start off with a clip of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Governor Ron DeSantis says the facility in Northeast Florida would hold around 2,000 detainees, but it's unclear how quickly it might open. However, he says the process for finding vendors is already underway, and that the goal is to help the federal government with immigration enforcement.
And that's part of the reason why on any given day, the number of arrests of illegal aliens throughout the country, 15 to 20% are just Florida alone. So we're punching way above our weight class on that.
But some in Jacksonville disagree, dozens holding their signs and chanting to the crowd, hoping to shut down the plans for the Florida National Guard training base.
Camp Landing is a place where soldiers train to defend freedom. Turning it into a site to cage immigrants, people seeking protection, hope, and opportunity, is a disgrace.
Very disturbing. But I am honored to welcome my first guest tonight. Gerald Griggs is a longtime defender and civil rights attorney. He joined Turn Left as a national spokesman this year, and tonight he's offering historical and legal perspective on the ICE detention centers run by private prison corporations. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my friend, Gerald Griggs.
Great to be with you, Jay.
Good to see you, Gerald. How are you?
Doing wonderful, brother. How you doing?
Good. How's it going down in Georgia?
It's going.
Yeah. So, Gerald, you and I have worked together a little bit on voting rights campaigns where they've been trying to strip Georgia citizens and citizens across the country, especially in Black and brown communities, of voting rights. And now we're looking at the biggest potential internment camp in Georgia rolling out. But I want to just start off with a little bit of the history. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of U.S. and internment camps and the constitutionality? Because the U.S. does have a disgraceful history of Japanese internment camps. But so I want to hear a little bit about the historical perspective. And are these camps constitutional?
And so that's the disturbing part about American history. We always glaze over this. It's not the first time this has happened. It's not even the first time this happened this century. What you have seen is, over the course of national emergencies, a weaponization of race. And so the very first time we saw this would be the Japanese internment camps in the 40s during World War II, where the president signed an executive order to detain Japanese American citizens. And the issue was so fraught with legal ramifications that it was argued all the way up to the Supreme Court. And one of the most shameful decisions of the court was Korematsu versus the United States, where they actually said that this is legal. Now, recently, the court has repudiated that decision in a case against this current administration and its other iteration, which would have been Trump versus Hawaii, where they said that Korematsu was wrongly decided. But again, it's not the first time that America has interned its own citizens or even used detention facilities like this one before. Of course, the worst situation we've ever seen would have been slavery, but that's a different type of internment. We saw this during the first iteration of the Iraqi conflict, where you saw Guantanamo Bay used with regard to the war on terror. And so you see this over and over and over again. And we, as civil rights activists and we as civil rights attorneys, always sound the alarm. Even in the first term of Donald Trump's presidency, when we saw families separated and children in those cages with the mesh wrappings on them, we've seen this before under the guise of a national emergency at the southern border.
Yeah, and of course was happening under the Obama administration as well. This is nothing new. But do these undocumented immigrants and legal residents, do they have rights? Are they protected by the Constitution?
Absolutely, they're protected by the Constitution. And interestingly enough, one of the first attacks under this administration on birthright citizenship, the 14th Amendment gives due process to all persons. It's not just citizens. All persons have a right to due process. So those that are here that are undocumented have an absolute right to notice and an opportunity to be heard. That's why it's incumbent upon civil rights activists and civil rights attorneys to come forward and make sure that our Constitution is being used and those protections are being given to all persons.
So, in your opinion, how much of this is being influenced by private prison companies like Geo Group and Core Civic, who are being given enormous contracts? Billions of dollars have been earmarked for these expansions, and right in your backyard, we're looking at one of the largest expansions of these internment camps. So, but what role do you think the private prison industry is playing in this?
Well, it's always about profit. You understand that first you have to otherize someone and then you profitize off of them. And so we're seeing that with regard to our immigration policy and the building of these private prisons. What you saw was a reduction over the last few years in the prison industrial complex, and now these private prisons being defunded and the overcrowding being removed. So you got to have somebody in those beds. And so now you're seeing those facilities transformed into detention facilities for immigration policy. And so you're seeing that. Of course, you're seeing private prisons explode in their profit, and you're seeing it being used in real time in our immigration detention facilities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sort of the tail wagging the dog.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing also the militarization of the mobilization of our military on U.S. soil against U.S. citizens, which I believe is a violation of posse comitatus. But can you tell us a little bit about the constitutionality of how the military, the National Guard, and of course Trump's ICE Gestapo is being mobilized against U.S. citizens who are demonstrating their right to free speech and free public assembly? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, one of the first and most important civil rights is the right to free expression, the right to free speech. And we saw the weaponization of that in California and other places where if they don't like the nature of the speech, and again, most of these were peaceful, nonviolent protests, the weaponization of the National Guard in opposition to what state leadership wanted to happen on the ground. So in California, during the course of the protest against ICE, coming into communities where they were not welcomed, being masked, detaining individuals who were actually American citizens, disappearing individuals off of the streets. You saw mass protests, and then you saw the weaponization of the National Guard, the bringing in of active duty soldiers to police civilians. And so this is unprecedented in its scope. It's not the first time it's happened, but it's definitely unprecedented to see it happening within 6 months of an administration change. So we believe that this is a violation of people's First Amendment rights. It's a violation of people's Fourth Amendment rights. Of course, it's a violation of 14th Amendment with regard to the individuals that are being detained, both American citizens and those that are undocumented. And you're also seeing individuals being removed in violation of court orders and being taken to other countries. And then the administration saying, well, they're outside of American jurisdiction, so we can't return them. So we're seeing wholesale ripping apart of our constitutional norms.
Yeah. And of course, in some of these cases, you have legal residents who are simply voicing their opinions in op-eds about U.S. foreign policy, and foreign agents essentially, some of these lobby groups are influencing U.S. policy to have these legal residents detained and removed. So it's very disturbing. Gerald, what's happening on the front lines? What is your strategy, and what can people do about it?
Well, there's massive mobilization happening on the front lines. Just this weekend, you saw all of the protests for rage against the regime. You saw 400 protests all over the country, thousands of people pushing back on the tactics that are being used by ICE and making sure that our local government understands that they have the absolute power to push back against this. And so what we're calling on people to do is not only peacefully protest, but to bring your grievances directly to your local elected officials. Mayors have the ability to not allow ICE in. Governors have the ability to not allow ICE in. Judges have the ability to not allow ICE in, because if they don't have a warrant and they don't have the legal authority to be where they are, they can't use these extrajudicial tactics to snatch up individuals and violate individuals' constitutional rights. So we're calling on individuals to call out their local mayors, call out their local officials, call out their governors to stop the weaponization of local law enforcement to do the bidding of the federal government. Now the federal government has gone rogue and is not following the Constitution. It's incumbent upon local actors to uphold the protections of the Constitution.
Absolutely. And Gerald, I'm really excited. We're going to be in New Orleans at Netroots on a panel talking about the 14th Amendment. It's just always such an honor to work with you. I really respect everything you do and who you are. And I just want to thank you for joining us and for your courage. I'm just really grateful. Thank you for joining us, Gerald.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to being with you in New Orleans.
Thanks again for tuning in to Turn Left's Stop the Camps live stream. At Turn Left, we blend fearless messaging, grassroots organizing, and tactical tech to lift progressive working class champions in districts often dismissed in mainstream politics. We expose corporate corruption and counter right-wing propaganda with rapid response media and local outreach strategies, particularly in red and rural areas where voters are often ignored. What we're trying to do basically is to shift public discourse. We're trying to elect leaders who prioritize everyday people, not the wealthy special interests, and build a democracy that works for everyone. And right now, I want to bring on a few of our team members. We're going to bring on Corey Archibald, who is a former board chair of Brand New Congress, advisor to well over 200 candidates for federal office, including AOC, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Maxwell Frost, and others. And she currently serves as the communication director for Turn Left. Everyone welcome Corey Archibald.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Look, I just want to take a moment first to thank everybody who is participating in this call right now. And I don't just mean the people on the call with me. I mean everybody who is also watching. Look, I've worked with most of the people on this call for years already. We've worked across multiple campaigns, different organizations, different projects, and all of us are very busy people. Nobody's hurting for extra work to do. But we pulled this effort together tonight because in the course of our work together, we discovered something pretty shocking, and that is that very few people know about what's actually going on inside Trump's internment camps. And I mean, even people who are politically engaged, people who are paying attention, people who want to know what is happening. Probably a lot of you on this call right now, even people like that are missing a lot of the details. So I want to just take a second and talk about the conditions inside one of these camps, and that's the one that they've been calling Alligator Alcatraz. And we can go ahead and pull up the news clips for this. So they are withholding medication and medical treatment from people that are being detained. They are limiting food to 1 meal per day. And when they serve that food, it's full of maggots and worms. The tents are flooding. There's no AC. And FYI, the high this week in South Florida was 97 degrees. They're being forced to go days without being allowed to have a shower or change clothes. The toilets aren't flushing properly, and they're spilling sewage all over the floor, the same floor of the space that they're sleeping in. by the way. Some people are being forced to sleep on hard concrete. They're keeping the lights on 24/7, which is, by the way, a tactic that they had used in Guantanamo Bay when they were detaining people in the George W. Bush era. They confiscated one man's Bible, and they told him, here there is no right to religion. They're not letting their lawyers see them. They won't let their families see them. Some of them are U.S. citizens. Most of them have no criminal convictions. One of them was a 15-year-old child. And that is just what we have been allowed to know. So I want to let that sink in for a second. And MAGA thinks that this is funny. They're laughing about this. They think this is so funny that they are selling merch for it. Official Republican Party campaign merchandise is being sold to brag and celebrate the idea of people being mauled to death by alligators. That's what's happening at that one camp in South Florida that they call Alligator Alcatraz. But guess what? They're building a lot more. If you want, you can go ahead and pull up the map here that we have. Look, there's already a lot of ICE facilities all over the place. They are planning a second camp in Florida, just like the one that we just talked about. This one's going to be on an active duty military base, Camp Blanding, a Florida National Guard base. There's a facility being built in Folkston, Georgia. That's going to be the largest facility, the largest processing facility in the country. Baldwin, Michigan, the largest one in the Midwest, is already open and operational. Kern County, California, is one being produced by or being set up, I believe, by Core Civic. Camp Atterbury, a military base in Indiana. Fort Bliss in Texas, another military base. All of these are either already active or they are in the works. And that, folks, is a drop in the bucket. These ICE detention centers have already increased by 30% from what they had operational in October of 2024. And that was before we gave them over $100 billion. So that means that there is an alligator Alcatraz coming to your backyard real soon if we don't do something to stop these camps. And that is why we're here tonight. I'm sorry I'm a little fired up, but Jay.
Oh, I mean, that's exactly the correct response. And in so many ways, isn't this part of the tactic? Because not only you're trying to terrorize people, but these often are put in remote locations so that it's very difficult for people to have access to their constitutionally protected legal counsel. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the facility in Baldwin, Michigan, for example, is located in the middle of absolutely nowhere in the center of Michigan, in the poorest county in Michigan. So they've now turned the poorest county in Michigan. They have turned the ICE facility there into the most prominent employer. In a place where you get to choose, if your job prospects are limited, whether or not you want to participate in incarcerating your neighbors and subjecting them to conditions like this.
Yeah,
that's what's happening.
Yeah, and so thank you so much for raising the alarm. You really were the one who brought this all to our attention, called together a coalition. Can you talk a little bit about some of the partners that you brought together for this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these are, like I said, these are great folks that I've been working with for a number of years. I mean, of course, I'm proud to be a part of the team at Turn Left, and I know we're going to be talking some more about the work that Turn Left does here in just a second. But also, my friends at Vote Common Good. They're doing exceptional work. Faith and Democracy. I mean, these are two organizations led by faith leaders who are driven by their values to stand up against Christian nationalism and MAGA extremism and just the hatred and cruelty and division that defines the Trump era. And then also, some of our other partners like Leaving MAGA. That's an incredible story right there that I encourage everybody to dig into. Rich Logis is a former Trump supporter who like found his way out of MAGA and realized how much he was being lied to, and now he is doing the just real yeoman's work in helping other people find their way out of that community, that group. And then, of course, we couldn't be doing any of this without our friends at Decleptocracy Project. I mean, these guys are real They dig into the corruption. They are the ones who are picking apart all of these private prison corporations and these no-bid contracts that are being handed out like candy, to really expose all of the nasty things that are happening there. So it's a really
Yeah.
strong coalition and growing, and I'm excited about together.
Yeah, and speaking of contracts, isn't it weird that Geo Group and Core Civic are getting contracts when Pam Bondi was a lobbyist for Geo Group, I believe?
Isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird, huh? So, Corey, this is not the first time that Turn Left was, sort of out front raising the alarm about this. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Alien Enemies Act?
Yeah, for sure. So, what happened was in October 11th, specifically of 2024, Trump gave a campaign speech in Aurora, Colorado, where it was the first time on record that he mentioned the use of his intention to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. And he was very fascinated about the fact that it was 1798. And he announced his intention to invoke this law to facilitate his mass deportation scheme. And Turn Left immediately keyed in on what that meant, because that is the law that was used to justify the World War II era internment camps of both Japanese and German American citizens and people who were residing in the United States at that time. So I mean, it was immediately apparent to us that this was a call to bring back internment camps, and frankly, that is exactly what's happened. But we jumped into action immediately, and I think that's what you wanted to show the group next.
Yeah. So, if you can just set up the ad, what are we?
Yeah, so we like I said, Trump gave that speech on October 11th of 2024, and within a week we had this ad that you're about to see running in critical swing districts to help turn out Democratic voters and help them understand the stakes of the election, that if they didn't show up and vote, that we would be dealing with internment camps like this. So that's the ad that we put together, and let's play it for the group.
In 1942, America invoked the Alien Enemies Act and imprisoned thousands of innocent people in camps like this. Sound familiar?
And I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Think of that. To hunt down, arrest, and deport every last illegal alien gang member until there is not a single one left in this country.
We've been here before. If you stay home, it happens again. Vote November 5th, paid for by Turn Left PAC.
Wow. Thank you, Corey. And coming up next, I also want to invite to the party Randy Jones. He's a senior advisor and media strategist for Turn Left. Welcome, Randy.
Hey, thanks, Jay.
Yeah. So, Randy, do you want to talk a little bit about Turn Left's approach to ads like this and some of our other strategies?
Sure. Yeah. So, Jay, Turn Left is made up of a group of Democratic political consultants that we've worked on a lot of projects together in the past. And in order to explain why Turn Left is different and how we're able to do these ads differently, I think it's important to talk about what the American political system and the industry that is the American political system has become, why it's broken, and how we're kind of subverting that. But right now, when a donor gives $5, $500, $5,000 to a campaign, you've got a payment processor that takes a piece of that. Then goes to the campaign, then you've got the consulting firm that writes the ad, and then you've got all these people down the line, and that donation gets watered down over time. But with Turn Left, when we came together, we said, this is our chance, this is our moment for us to create messages, create images that we feel will resonate best with the American public, and cut all those middlemen out and take those donations and put them straight onto televisions, put them straight onto iPhones, put them straight onto Facebook pages, and deliver that message while maximizing the donors' potential to have their dollars go as far as they want.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about your background. You're a veteran media strategist. You were press secretary for Andrew Yang. And why do you think this is important?
Well, I think it's important, not only just the mechanism that we're coming with, but it's also the language that we're coming with. I think a big reason why this group of people at Turn Left work so well together, and frankly, why we decided to do this in the first place, is we were really tired of Democrats going to a rock fight with a damn throw pillow, Jay. And so we said, look, if we're going to come up with messaging that we think is really effective, if we're going to come up with messaging that maybe some candidates are afraid to say, some groups are afraid to use certain words, certain truths, then we want to take that time and those efforts and be most effective with the deployment of those messages. And so when you combine the fact that we're not afraid to tell the truth, that we're not afraid to take these people to task, that we're not afraid to tell the American people what's really going on, and then deliver them in a way that is most economically effective for the donors, I think that's why it's important. It's to get these messages that must go out and out there while maximizing the return on the investment.
Well said. Thanks, Randy. And thanks for all the work you do. One of the best, you wouldn't know this, but Randy is really one of the best secretaries in the game and getting those stories out. So thank you so much, Randy, for all your work. Thank you, Corey, for your work. And we're not, I think the point is that we're not sitting back playing defense. We're not just reacting. We're getting out ahead of it, and we're going to the places that have been left behind. Like we did in Austin recently. We went to Austin to respond to Governor Abbott's fascist legislative agenda. We built a coalition. We showed up on his doorstep at the governor's mansion with a coalition of, we had 800 people and a coalition for racial justice, gender justice, climate justice, undocumented rights, LGBTQIA rights, and we marched to the governor's mansion. During their legislative session, we were joined by James Tellerico and other great Texas leaders. And so, Randy, any other parting thoughts to folks who are feeling maybe disillusioned by the current political process?
Yeah, I would say I get it. And as someone who lives, eats, breathes, and frankly sleeps it every single day, it's certainly easy to become discouraged. But I just think you have to turn that disillusion into passion and just get in the fight more than you have been before. And what we've heard so many great folks speak about today is that the moment has never been more important. We hear that every time, but now we're talking about the loss of due process in America. We're talking about a dictatorship beginning. We're talking about the fact that why we say history is doomed to repeat itself, what's happening right in front of our eyes. And so we can't let off the gas pedal. We have to go full blast. And the moment is now. And at Turn Left, we know that. And we're capitalizing on that moment. And we're committed to making sure that we overturn these elections in the midterms, take back the White House, and save this country.
That's right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Corey Archibald. Thank you, Randy Jones. Thank you for all your tireless work. And thank you again to all of our partners. Stay tuned. We have more inspiring guests. We are going to hear from Reverend Jen and Doug Paget from Vote Common Good and for Faith and Democracy. We'll be hearing from a message from Rich Logis and Leaving MAGA. And so we just want to thank all of our coalition partners and everyone who is on the front lines doing the hard work of fighting fascism and standing for our undocumented communities and standing up for what it really means to be an American. Thank you again for tuning into our Stop the Camps live stream. Please share this with your friends. Let everybody know what is happening here because it's being tragically underreported. Please scan the QR code now because we can't do it without you. We don't have corporate lobbyists. We don't have billionaire super PACs. We just have you, and we can't do it without your support. And coming up next, we are going to be watching a clip of Donald Trump himself talking about this camp, followed by Pastor Doug Paget and Reverend Jen Butler talking about the immorality of these camps and some of the conditions, as well as Christian nationalism. So let's go to the clip.
We're surrounded by miles of treacherous swampland, and the only way out is really deportation.
They call it Alligator Alcatraz, Florida's new state-run migrant center located deep in the Everglades, surrounded by dense swamp and alligator terrain. It's projected to hold up to 5,000 detainees. Migrants from across the country are being transported here.
Very soon, this facility will house some of the most menacing migrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet.
But the idea that Alligator Alcatraz is only for violent criminals isn't supported by Florida's own enforcement plan for the Everglades facility. It spells out how to handle kids, pregnant women, seniors, and families, regardless of criminal history. Undocumented immigrants without criminal convictions could end up in a remote detention center surrounded by alligators. In his view, it's part of a bigger effort to wear people down and send a message.
When you have individuals who are being picked up in California, in Texas, in Arizona, they're being sent across the country.
But plenty of people seem to support the idea. Alligator Alcatraz merchandise is being sold across social media. And videos of families posing for photos outside the facility are starting.
Coming up next on our Turn Left, Fight for Your Rights, Stop the Camps live stream, we have two amazing guests. We have Pastor Doug Paget and Reverend Jen Butler. Pastor Doug is a progressive evangelical pastor and the founder and executive director of Vote Common Good. His organization works to inspire people of faith and good conscience to stand up to MAGA politics and Christian nationalism. Doug has led numerous direct actions, including confronting the Army of God MAGA convoy at the border, and I guess it was February in 2024. Reverend Jen is a powerhouse who spent decades organizing religious communities to fight for justice and to stand up to authoritarianism. And today she leads the Faith and Democracy group to confront the threat of Christian nationalism. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Pastor Doug and Reverend Jen.
Thanks, Jay. Great to be here.
Hey, Jay. So good to be with you. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Doug. Good to be with you again.
So to both of you, thank you for your work. It's incredibly important. I just wanted to hear, so we just watched a clip that got into the camps that talked about, you know, what are going to be some of the conditions in the camps, talking about how some of the MAGA followers are buying merchandise. And, you know, and a lot of these folks identify as Christians. And I wanted to, let's start with Jen. What are your thoughts when you see that, when you hear people who profess to be Christians, really having this type of worldview?
Yeah, Jay, I feel furious right now. Like, I feel like Jesus in the temple, and I want to go flip some tables, to be honest. And it's hard for me to smile tonight, even though I'm with good company and I can smile at Doug and Jay. But, you know, I feel livid about what is happening. It's so unchristian when our text, our scripture tells us over and over again to welcome the stranger, that whatever we do to Jesus, whatever we do to the least of these, we do to Jesus. And people are going around celebrating detention camps, and they're not even just detention camps, they're torture camps. These are camps that will kill people. And I saw this during the first Trump term when they were separating children from their parents. I went down to the border and I saw firsthand as kids were, you know, finally let out, some of them by the grace of God, let out, carried into a Catholic respite center and seen by doctors and given a warm meal, but really on their last leg. And this is just pure evil. So I say I feel angry and livid, but I also feel sad because people are really being led astray. You know, and so I do, when I stop and take a few deep breaths, I also feel desperate because people are being led astray. This is not the Christian faith. And people who live in fear and anger, you know, it does soul damage. And so I'm hoping, you know, that a lot of people, and I do hear people every day who are waking up and realizing what we were told would happen here is not happening here. We're not arresting felons or people who've done bad things or people who need to be taken off the streets. I'm reading a news report that the daughter of a colleague was just snatched off the streets in New York, an Episcopal priest, just yesterday. And she had done nothing wrong. She's done all the things she's supposed to do to comply with the law. So that's how I feel. I'll pause and take a deep breath, but I feel angry, and I feel a sort of desperateness for Christian brothers and sisters that are being deluded and led astray by this president.
Yeah, and hopefully, as we heard from Richard Logis in and Leaving MAGA, more people will connect to their conscience and realize that we are all God's children and everyone deserves dignity. And Pastor Doug, I want to hear a little bit more about your experience confronting MAGA extremists and the army of God.
Yeah, that was an important day when a group of people who decided they were the army of God wanted to put together a truck convoy and go to Eagle Pass, Texas, in the border of West Texas, to put up a militia to protect the country against people that they thought should not be allowed in this country. That's not how we run a country. We don't have militias. We don't have self-proclaimed armies of God. But they were going to support then, the governor of Texas and the presidential candidate who became the president in the election that same year. And we went down to raise a voice because so often people of faith need to speak up. And it's very tempting for people of faith to think that they don't want to pick a side. But you pick the side of justice and you pick the side of goodness. And if that means you're on the wrong side of someone's political opinion, well, then you stand firm in your faith. And I'll just say, as a pastor and as a person of faith, I cannot stay silent while our government turns detention centers into tools of fear. These are really modern day monuments to cruelty. And that's the intention, right? They're not holding spaces designed for immigrant processing. They are designed to intimidate and to threaten and to dehumanize. And because I'm a Christian, my gospel of Jesus teaches me to see the image of God in everyone. Many religions teach this. And the humanist concept of reciprocity calls us to care for another as we would want to be cared for. This is basic human goodness. And these detention centers are not being used for processing. They are designed to punish. They're designed to be a visible threat to scare others. So we've moved from any governance into cruelty. And this is a tactic. It's a tactic not of justice, but of dominance. And we have to say really clearly, this is not how a lawful country behaves, right? This isn't what justice looks like, because we don't even know what's going on in these places. We don't even know, in the place they want to call Alligator Alcatraz, who's there. As Jen brought up, there are people there who were put in this country legally, brought in this country by the legal process, and then their visa expired. And Jay, so many people know this, that once your visa expires, to get it renewed, you have to go back to your country of origin and reapply and pay all of these huge fees. And maybe the process will get to your application and allow you to come back in the country. But most likely it doesn't.
Well,
so people
beyond
end
that,
up in our country legally, and then they want to stay longer than their determined visa time because they're working and they're building a family, and they can't. And that doesn't make them criminals. That makes our system unlawful.
Well,
So
not
we have
only
an
that,
unlawful
you have ICE going to hearings where people are trying to do the right thing. Like, they're literally trying to do the right thing. They're trying to follow the law. And ICE is going to hearings. They're going to court hearings and
intercepting them.
Which is crazy. And so, Reverend Jen, you talked about Jesus flipping over the tables of the money changers. Speaking of which, what are your thoughts on the fact that so much of this is motivated by Geo Group and Core Civic, these giant private prison centers who are getting billions and billions and billions in federal contracts to roll out these internment camps all over the country. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's why that temple story is so perfect, because it comes down to economic exploitation and greed. And what we see with the democratic backsliding that's happening here, and Trump wanting to be a king or an autocrat, what it ultimately has to do with is money and greed. this is just a resource capture. Trump is making a load of money off of this presidency, and these contractors are making a lot of money off of this unconstitutional move around detention centers. And so that's why some people stay silent. They get bought off and they see themselves benefiting from this system. And so we need to call that out. And I think that's what Jesus was doing in the temple. This was a system of economic exploitation, and they were using a place of worship. They were using religion to exploit people economically. The Roman Empire was brutal economically, and that just infuriated Jesus. He normally led with compassion and empathy for all, but in that moment, he wanted to reverse the system. He wanted to take that system down. And I think that's what we're called to do in this moment, is to challenge the system, to expose the system for what it is, and to resist it in each of our communities. And I do see faith communities stepping up. I was just reading the words of a Baptist pastor who I know in Texas, who has been accompanying families and standing outside detention centers. It's something we want to do by coming together on this program. We're working to take this system down, to turn the tables over, and to call it what it is. I can walk outside my door here in Virginia and everything feels normal on one level. The birds are singing, it looks gorgeous, the heat wave is finally gone. But I know as a pastor and talking to other pastors, what's going on out there underneath, because our parishioners are being taken. Other clergy are being taken. As I said earlier, the daughter of a priest in New York City was just taken yesterday. And she was there doing what they told her to do, checking in on her visa and trying to get her citizenship. And she was told that was okay. And she even left the courthouse having been told she was fine and she was okay. And they took her off the sidewalk. No due process. They're not even supposed to take her under our law. So people are just willy-nilly being rounded up and thrown in the worst possible circumstances. You saw the pictures in that film that y'all showed. The worst possible circumstances anybody could imagine. And it harkens back to other times in our history where we've done that, around World War II with Japanese citizens and German citizens, unfairly putting them in prison camps here and taking their land. What was behind that, in the case of at least the Japanese in California, agricultural wanted their land. Business owners wanted their land. They put them in camps, they took their resources, and there was no reason to do that. They were American
and it is a stain. It is a stain on the American memory.
Yeah.
Japanese internment is a stain, and history will look back upon these internment camps and the persecution of our immigrant communities as a stain. And I would love to hear in closing, Pastor Doug, thank you, by the way, for being part of our coalition and your leadership in this coalition to get boots on the ground, not just talking about it, not just sending emails, but also getting into the front lines. This is not a partisan issue.
Right.
And yet we have seen so many Christian nationalists from the pulpit using their pulpits to drive people towards right-wing extremist policies that have nothing to do with their faith. But I want to just hear from you. What is your message to people, whether it is trying to talk to family members, whether it's talking to those faith leaders? How do we get through to help them realize that this is not in alignment with our moral conscience? This is not who we are. It is un-American. It is un-Christian. So how do you get through? And Doug, how do you get through to people?
Well, the first step to that, and thank you for that question, is to be willing to say something. And a lot of times people don't want to talk about politics, especially something as complicated as immigration, because they don't know, right? They're themselves, a lot of people who would oppose what Donald Trump is doing, they'd oppose what ICE is doing. The details of all this it's really complicated. And so people feel limited in what they can say. So then they hear the president say something, or they hear a faith leader say something, and they just assume that those people are speaking with honor, that they're truth tellers. And so often they're not. Maybe it's because they're uninformed or because they're choosing to misinform people. So it's important that we learn a few things. And what we advise is figure out what you want to know. Do you want to know about the immigration processes that exist? Do you want to know about internment camps? like Alligator Alcatraz? Do you want to know what it takes for someone to enter the country illegally or stay? Pick an area to learn about so that you can know something, because knowing builds confidence. When
Absolutely.
we feel passion and we feel uninformed, it just burns inside of us.
Yeah,
And then to say something to a friend or a family member, really to reach out and say something. We're also going to encourage people to reach out to what some people know exists, which is the White House Faith Office. It's part of the Domestic Policy Council. It's now in the White House. And Paula White Kane is the senior advisor. Someone named Jennifer Crone is the person in charge of the office. And Jackson Lane is the special assistant to the president and deputy of the office. We're going to send them a whole lot of communication. We're going to communicate with them and say, you are the faith office communicating to the White House. This does not fit the faith of Christians, of Muslims, of Jews, of Buddhists, of Hindus, of the atheist community, of the humanist community. This doesn't match anyone's faith. And if you're going to be the office speaking to the White House about issues of faith, you have to stand up. We cannot let our politicians or our faith leaders have a pass on this issue. So I really encourage people to speak to their friends and their family, and then to speak to people who can do something about it. And the faith Office of Faith in the White House and your local pastor, that is a group that you can speak to.
Absolutely. And these laws can be very complex. The process can be complex, but what is not complex is that every person on American soil has the right to due process. Every single one is protected by the Constitution. Now, Pam Bondi may not like it. Donald Trump may not like it, but they in fact do have the right by the 14th Amendment, by the 4th Amendment, by the entire Constitution to due process. They have their right to their day in court. They have their right. They do have basic rights no matter what anyone tells you.
Yeah.
So make sure that everybody knows that.
Jay, that's a great point. Can I tell you, do you know what is complicated? Sending humans to Mars is complicated. Do you know we have people that are working on whole plans to send people to Mars? Because we think we can do hard things and we can work on complicated issues. Do you know what we can solve? The immigration process in the United States. As long as it is broken, we should not be deporting people who are suffering under its brokenness. Look, here's what Republicans say all the time. Until we secure the border, we cannot fix the broken immigration system. They have spent $600 billion securing the border. It will never be secured to their satisfaction. I suggest we say no deportations until we fix the system that's forcing people to be deported.
Well, I mean, let's call it for what it is as well. I mean, this is just a dog whistle and a wedge issue to distract the country from the fact that Donald Trump and his billionaire cronies they want to distract you from the fact that they are the ones looting the coffers. They're the ones who are, taking all of the money out of our social safety net so that they can enrich themselves with giant subsidies. And they want to blame the most vulnerable people to play on the white supremacy that is rife throughout this nation that we still must address within. So let's call it for what it is.
And Jay, I'm with you. And I also want to add this. Look, and we're going to work as an organization in every single district to flip that's flippable from red to blue at the congressional level. And I'll tell you, every single candidate for the House of Representatives needs to be asked this year, a Democrat and a Republican, what is your plan to fix the broken immigration system? We cannot continue to only blame Republicans. Democrats have had control of our government and have not fixed this broken system. They cannot have a pass on it any longer.
Yeah, we used to call Obama the deporter in chief. Like Donald Trump's first term numbers didn't come close to President Obama. So that
his first 100-day numbers hasn't matched Biden's first 100-day number of deportations. So look, we need to fix the system. And this has become not a left or right issue. This has become a we the people issue. We have to pressure every politician to fix it and stop letting them say it's complicated. We don't know what to do. If it's complicated, fix it. And fixing it is something we can do because look, this is not only bad policy, this is bad for the spirit and the spiritual heart of this country. It is harmful to the soul of America, what we're doing. And these internment camps are monuments to failure and monuments to cruelty,
Well
and they
said.
cannot exist.
Well said. So Jen, take us out. Just a message from your heart to could be the people who are watching. It could be people who have family members. Just a message from your heart to theirs.
Yeah, don't give up hope. Know that every act you take, whether it's talking to a family member or a neighbor, even just opening a crack in their reasoning, writing, calling your members of Congress, all of that matters. All of it tilts the arc of the universe toward justice. So, and if you and your family are affected, reach out to the faith community. Lots of us are with you. Lots of us are taking action to support, and you are in our prayers. And so we are in solidarity with you. And I look forward to being in solidarity with everyone as you join this movement. Come and join us. We're going to make a difference.
Thank you. And just to remind everyone that getting involved, showing up is, if you're feeling hurt, if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling angry, coming together in real life with other humans is such a powerful message. Thank you for your work, Reverend Jen, with Faith and Democracy. Thank you, Pastor Doug. Vote Common Good. Please sign up on their websites, follow them. And ongoingly, we will be working as a coalition. Stay tuned, because there will be announcements for coalition calls, organizing calls, to see how you can get involved and make a difference. Please come and join us. Turnleftpac.org. You can sign up. Stopthecamps.com. You can sign up. And please stay in touch. And also, I also recommend Reverend Jen's book, Who Stole My Bible? So
Christian nationalists did that.
So thank you
Christian
both.
nationalists stole the Bible, in case you don't know the answer to the question.
Okay, so thank you both for joining us.
Take
Thank
it
you
back.
for your work. And I'm just so honored to have you both with us. And I really look forward to the work to come.
Thanks so much, Jay.
Thanks. An honor to be with you.
Again, thank you for joining us on the Stop the Camps live stream. And we can't do this without you. And we also can't do it without our partners. A big shout out to We and Goliath, and to our broadcast tech, Mike Cook, who have, I'm telling you, the work that they put into bringing this together has been absolutely tremendous. So we couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do it without our other coalition partners, Vote Common Good, Faith and Democracy, the Dekleptocracy Alliance, Free Speech TV, and also Leaving MAGA. Coming up next, we're going to hear from founder of Leaving MAGA, Rich Logis, who has created a group for Trump supporters who have realized that they have been lied to. And it also is creating tools for the friends and family of how they can speak to their loved ones who have been pulled into the MAGA orbit, so to speak. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is a message from Rich Logis.
Hi, everyone. This is Rich Logis, Executive Director, Leaving MAGA. I partnered with tonight's organizations because there are so many Americans who are unaware of the extent of cruelty, injustice, and unconstitutionality of these camps. We will continue to speak out because we think that the Republican Party and Trump administration want to open additional camps rife with inhumane conditions. I live in Florida. The so-called alligator Alcatraz is in my backyard, and we've discovered that many across the country know very little about this camp. The leaders you're hearing from tonight are working tirelessly. Americans need to know what's happening on the ground, and the information tonight will provide a plan of action. The GOP and Trump administration want us to believe that we're helpless, but we aren't. Thank you for being with us tonight and for supporting our work.
So stay tuned, everybody. We have a real treat. Retired Major Richard Ojeda is going to be with us. He is a firebrand, very inspiring. We're going to be talking about how the U.S. military is being mobilized against U.S. citizens. on U.S. soil. We're going to be talking about how these military bases are being converted into internment camps. But first, let's just take a moment to remember why Trump was mobilizing military against U.S. citizens. Maybe it had something to do with his failed North Korean dictator military birthday party, which didn't go so well. So let's take a clip and remember why. Yeah, so it didn't go so well for him. And we're going to be talking to Richard about how not all of our military is in alignment with the commander-in-chief's fascist and racist policies against our undocumented communities and against our American citizens. Again, we're going to hear a little bit more about the military being deployed against U.S. citizens. Here's a clip.
Here's a look at the latest developments. President Trump is mobilizing an additional 2,000 National Guard members to help protect federal buildings in L.A.
We can tell you that the National Guard is stationed here around federal buildings. We're just outside the detention center. You can see them there. Take a look. About 700 U.S. Marines from the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment out of 29 Palms received weekend orders and are on the way, expected to arrive this morning. That according to U.S. Northern Command, which confirmed that those Marines will support the more than 2,000 National Guard troops already activated across the area. And late yesterday, the Pentagon said it's mobilizing an additional 2,000 National Guard troops under President Trump's order. And that now pushes the number of military personnel to more than 4,000, with growing opposition from Governor Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass, the governor calling the deployment unnecessary. The president's move to activate these National Guard troops marks the first time the federal government has done so without a governor's consent since the 60s.
I am honored to welcome our next guest. Richard Ojeda is a retired Army major who has had multiple deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other locations across his 24 years of military service. Richard is running for Congress, and I'm sure he's going to have a lot of thoughts about the use of U.S. military against U.S. citizens, the use of U.S. military bases. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome Richard Ojeda. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on your show.
All right. What's happening? What's happening in your world right now?
Well, you know, we are running a congressional campaign. We're trying to put boots on the ground as often as possible. We are trying to meet with people. We're showing up at city council meetings, county commission meetings, board of education meetings. You know, we're just trying to find out what the major issues are so that when we are successful and make it to Washington, D.C., we know exactly what we got to fight for.
And you know, this country really needs people like you, military veterans, patriotic Americans who are going to stand up for our Constitution, stand up for our citizens against the corrupt forces that are trying to use racism and corruption to basically push their political agenda. But Richard, you're retired, 25 years of military service, multiple combat deployments, right? 2 Bronze Stars, if I'm not correct. Am I correct in that? 2 Bronze Stars?
Yes, sir. It was 24 years. Yes, you're right.
24 years, 2 Bronze Stars. What is your feeling when you see how our military bases are being converted into internment camps?
I think it's absolutely unacceptable. We should not be using our military bases so that Donald Trump and his administration can show cruelty to people. It's not right. It's not what soldiers are for. And once again, you know, when he sent the Marines and the National Guard into California, that's not what we raise our hand and take an oath to do. We take an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And right now, Donald Trump thinks that the military should be his personal, goon squad. And I really am disappointed in a lot of our senior leadership. because I'm not hearing anything from our senior leadership. You know, we keep hearing things that there's like friction at the Pentagon with Pete Hegseth, but I want to see these generals come out and start speaking the truth, because you know what? This is unacceptable. They're 4-star generals. You're not going to be a 5-star general. So do what is right. We expect you to do what is right. And right now, a lot of them are sitting quiet, acting like they're scared they're going to lose their job. We need courage right now. Make no mistake about it. Stand up and absolutely speak out against what's going on. And if he daggone decides to fire you and get rid of you, we'll bring you back on when he's gone. But don't allow him to make you look like a coward because you're going to sit quiet. That's unacceptable.
That's right. And didn't they take an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic?
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, look at what one of the first firings that they took place. It was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is in charge. He's the leader of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And why did they fire him? Because he had an impeccable record. They fired him merely because of the color of his skin. And we're watching that. We're watching women their careers are getting schwacked because they're women. We're watching people of color get their careers schwacked because they're of color. And it's blatantly obvious. And right now, this is what bothers me, is that these general officers, they see that. You know, where is the outcry when they try to take away the education of the Tuskegee Airmen and the Buffalo Soldiers? You know, these people fought our wars. And right now they're trying to basically remove that history. And anybody in office, or I'm sorry, anybody that's a general in the military should be fighting for that. Our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, we're better because of the people that serve in our ranks. And those are people of all race, creeds, and color. And it is unacceptable right now that we have a bunch of racists in Washington, D.C. that are trying to erase the history that is absolutely so rich with people that have went above and beyond. And it's unacceptable what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, you're seeing all those doctored photos of MS-13 tattoos, but let's take a look at Hegseth's tattoos, right? Let's take a look at that. So Richard, your family has a deep history, but before we get into your family's history, you know, we're talking about, you know, Trump's military, and I couldn't help but notice when he deployed U.S. soldiers, Marines, against American citizens exercising their constitutionally protected First Amendment rights to free speech and assembly, was really strange to me that it came after his birthday flop, his North Korean dictator military flop, right? Remember, he tried to. And what did you think when you saw the soldiers during that failed birthday parade, you know, marching out of step? What did that tell you?
Well, first and foremost, every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marines knows how to march. But the thing about it is that, you know, we do that for change of command ceremonies and stuff like that. This was nothing more than a wannabe dictator's parade. And you know what? It's kind of like I could tell that the general officers knew that this was garbage, and they just basically told everybody to route step, and they just walked. You know, it wasn't what Donald Trump wanted, you know, but it's exactly what he deserved. I don't think that
what do you think about seeing the Marines deployed? And largely, we have peaceful demonstrations. According to, I've been in LA for 20 years, and according to every single report, these were peaceful demonstrations until ICE, until the police, and until the military showed up. But what was your thought? What was your feeling seeing Marines being deployed against U.S. citizens, especially to cover over the embarrassment, allegedly, potentially, of Trump's failed North Korean dictator birthday parade?
How dare he, a draft dodger, 5-time draft deferment, how dare he place soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines on, you know, the streets of Los Angeles? Of course, it was the National Guard and the Marines, you know, placing those people there. And literally in some cases, I mean, we may have seen people putting hands on each other and things like that. You don't do that. You know, Marines are absolutely amazing people, and they are warriors, and that is an absolute fact. And Donald Trump put them down there because Donald Trump wanted them to hurt Americans. And what type of leader does that? That you're literally, and once again, we know that they were peaceful protesting. You know, they were exercising their First Amendment right. And that wasn't good enough for Donald Trump. Donald Trump wanted to cause a problem. Donald Trump wanted to make some noise so people would look the other way, because that's what Donald Trump does. You know, his parade was an absolute flop. Our troops are not there to daggone, you know, to play for you. And that's exactly what this was. And I'm hoping that it was so bad that he's not going to try to do this every year. But make no mistake about it, he will. He will try to make every year the birthdays of the Army, the Marines, to try to do his little parades for himself. And it's unacceptable. It's not what we do. It's not what our soldiers join the military for, period.
Certainly not befitting of a commander in chief.
No.
So Richard, your family has this actually is a really deep connection to your family. Your grandfather, as I understand, immigrated from, was it Jalisco, from Mexico?
Yep. Jalisco, Mexico.
And so this is really part of your family. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings based on your family's history of coal mining. You know, we're basically rooted in working class struggle. How does your family's history inform your perspective on this immigration enforcement and the cost of these detention centers?
Well, you know, immigrants have put in the work. Immigrants work. And I'm going to tell you right now, Mexican people work hard. They're very hardworking. They're very family oriented. You know, when I was a kid growing up, every Sunday, the entire family had to show up at my grandfather's house. And if you didn't show up, the next week, you're going to have to stand in front of the entire family and explain why you wasn't there. You know, the family it was a poor family. They were very poor, you know, and coal mining was the way of life. And coal mining, if you know how coal miners were treated and how they're still treated to this day, it's a pretty rough life. But, you know, that was what my family did. Today, you know, if my grandfather was alive, they would be targeting him, you know, and that's just, it's not right. It's not right. And just, you know, it's so sad because I know that families are being uprooted. And what's really sad is that, you know, you have Latinos and Hispanic people that absolutely have been in this country, and a lot of them actually supported Donald Trump. Now, you know, I don't want to sit and throw stones at them because they supported Donald Trump, but now they're starting to wake up and realize that it was all a trick. It was to try to dupe them out of their votes. But now that he's in for his second term, he's going after these people and he's trying to remove them. He has already removed the protections of Nicaraguans, Hondurans, of Cubans. You know, I've already heard them talking about basically removing the protections of our interpreters. Do you know how important our interpreters were in Afghanistan? We would have never accomplished the first mission if it wasn't for our interpreters. I've got interpreters that shed blood, that were shot. And literally, we worked for 10 years and we finally got them to America. And right now, I am contacting them and saying, you got to please keep in touch with me. If you go anywhere, I've got to make sure that we know. Because if you disappear, we've got to try to find you quickly because they could literally put you in a gulag someplace in El Salvador. And that's unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. It's unconstitutional. It's un-American. And I think the main point is that this issue is not a partisan issue. Okay. We are fighting for the basic foundation of our democracy, which is hanging by a thread. And clearly this administration is doing everything it can to move us towards a dictatorship, including talking about, you know, staying in power for, you know, coming back for a third term. I want you to just give us some closing words, especially talking to your comrades in the military, those of the people in service. If you had a message to offer to your fellow service people and the American public about this time, what would be your message to America and to our military and our veterans?
there was more people that chose not to vote at all than voted for Donald Trump. You know, if you're serving in the military right now, you see what's going on. And I'm going to tell you that, you know, there's nobody that is, we don't have stupid people in our military. We have one of the most educated fighting forces on the face of the earth. And it's time for people to start realizing that, you know what, you participate in making sure that we have freedom, but you also need to vote to make sure that we have freedom. And right now, nobody gets to sit in this one out. Nobody gets to sit it out. I tell people that if you're driving to the polling place to cast your vote and you're in an empty car, you're wrong. You need to fill that car with people so that everybody can go and make sure that they have their voices heard. We need people to get to the polls. Right now, we have an administration that is trying to do away with our democracy and bring a dictatorship. And everybody in the military should understand that that is something that we cannot allow to happen. And therefore, nobody gets a pass. Nobody stays home. Everybody goes to the polls and has their voices heard. And that's the only way we're going to save this nation, is if people get involved and stay involved.
That's right. Thank you, retired Major Richard Ojeda. Wishing you the best in your race. We need more people like you standing up for Americans, standing up for our rights. And that is why we're doing this broadcast, to to sound the alarm and encourage people not only to vote, not only to get into the electoral process, but to join our coalition in standing up and getting boots on the ground, doing direct actions to stop these immoral, expensive, and illegal internment camps. But Richard, thank you for your service, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you for the opportunity to come onto your show and basically allow me to exercise my freedom of speech. So thank you very much, and you have a blessed day.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you once again, everyone who tuned in. Thank you for joining us for Turn Left's Stop the Camps live stream. Please stay connected, stay in touch, sound the alarm, call your representatives, call the press, and follow us at stopthecamps.com. Sign up so that you can stay in touch to hear about organizing calls and more mobilizations and what we're going to be doing on the ground. Also go to turnleftpac.org to stay informed. We want to thank all of our amazing partners, We and Goliath, our broadcast tech, Mike Cook. We want to thank Vote Common Good, Faith and Democracy, the Decleptocracy Alliance, Leaving MAGA, Free Speech TV, our wonderful speakers, Gerald Griggs, Doug Padgett, Reverend Jen, Corey Archibald, Randy Jones, the entire Turn Left team, Major Richard Ojeda, and please thank yourself for showing up. This is what's going to take for us as Americans to meet this moment and this moral crisis. No one is coming to save us. If we are going to get through this, it is going to be together, and it is going to require all of us. So thank you for joining us. StopTheCamps.com. We cannot do this without your support. We are funded entirely by small individual donations. So please support us and join us. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. My name is Jay Ponte, Director of Campaigns for Turn Left PAC.